Hi there. We're going to take a look at the charges against Ethan Crumbley's parents. I'm going to walk you through the complaint. We're going to look at the charges, the 4 involuntary manslaughter charges against his parents for the death of those students who tragically lost their lives during the school shooting on November 30th, 2021 at Oxford High School in Michigan. So I want to say thank you to all of those who reached out and asked me to take a look at the cases against Crumbleys. And if you haven't watched the video, I did a video and I walked you through the 24 counts, the potential witnesses, and the potential evidence against Ethan Crumbley. So please do take a look at that video. This video, we're going to take a look at the charges against his parents, the potential penalties, the witnesses, and the evidence. So, thank you to all of those of you who have subscribed. Please support my work by subscribing. Hit that like button, hit the bell notification, and please do leave a comment or question. I want to know what your analysis is, because this video is simply my analysis, simply my opinion. It's for education and information purposes. So, it's a terrible, terrible tragedy. So in case you popped onto this channel, let me give you a little bit of background information. So on November 30th, 2021, Ethan Crumbley, 15-year-old sophomore at Oxford High School in Michigan, is accused of shooting and killing 4 of his fellow students and injuring 7 other people. I think they're all students. And he's facing 24 counts. Now his parents, and this is rare that parents are being charged, although it's not without precedent, I'll tell you in a second. It has happened before. But his parents, Jennifer and James Crumbley, I think they're ages 44 and 45 or 43 and 45, they're being charged also for the killings of those 4 students who tragically lost their lives. However, they're being charged with involuntary manslaughter, a lesser offense. Their son, Ethan, is being charged with first-degree murder, possessing a firearm during commission of a felony, assaulting with the intent to murder, and a terrorism charge. So, parents being charged for the acts of their minor child. They're facing 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. They're not being charged with the other charges that Ethan is charged with. They're not being charged with possession of a firearm. They're not being charged with assault with the intent to commit murder. They're being charged with the involuntary manslaughter, the deaths of those 4 students who tragically lost their lives. Okay, so the Ethan's case is set for trial, I think, in January 2023, and his parents' trial is set for October 24th, so it's coming up soon. It could be continued, but at this point it's scheduled, the jury trial for his parents, October 24th. All right, so regarding, it's not without precedent, in Michigan, I think there was another case in 2000 where a father was charged with involuntary manslaughter because I think it's his nephew, so I guess the uncle was charged, because the nephew got a hold of his gun, went to school, and ended up shooting and killing a fellow first grader. Now that uncle pled no contest. They didn't go to trial, but they pled no contest for the involuntary manslaughter. So, in this case, the Crumbleys are dealing with involuntary manslaughter, the killing related to their son, Ethan Crumbley, who was 15 at the time. And just to give you a little update, I believe the defense attorneys representing the Crumbleys, they're being represented by 2 attorneys that I think they currently filed, or they did file, with the appellate court to ask the appellate court to throw out these charges against the Crumbleys. So we'll have to see how that turns out. But at this point, they are charged, and the case is proceeding to trial. Okay? So let's take a look at the complaint, the charges that have been filed against the Crumbleys, Jennifer and James Crumbley. Okay, so I apologize if this is blurry, but my copy's blurry too. So the people of the state of Michigan, so that's the prosecutors, versus James Robert Crumbley and Jennifer Lynn Crumbley. That's Ethan's parents. They're being charged in this complaint for the offense on November 30th, 2021, the school shooting that took place at Oxford High School. So the complainants, those could be the victims, it could be witnesses, but in this case, these are the 4 students who tragically lost their lives during that school shooting. Madison Baldwin, Tate Meyer, Hannah St. Juliana, and Justin Schilling. So, who are the potential witnesses that the prosecution intends to call? Lieutenant T. Willis from the OCSO, I think that's Oakland County Sheriff's Office. Detective Sergeant Weir, you can look at all of these other detectives and sergeants. So, they're going to be calling a bunch of police officers. Then we have a bunch of, I think these are mostly the students at Oxford High or the witnesses at Oxford High. Many of these individuals were injured at the shooting, and they're also the victims in the case, in Ethan Crumbley's case. He's being charged with assault with the intent to commit murder on several of these individuals, several of these students, okay? So Jonathan Escudo, Aiden Watson, Elijah Mueller, Riley Franz, Kylie Osage, Molly Darnell, Phoebe Arthur. Those are all students, or I think the 7 students that were injured at the school shooting. Okay, so there's going to be students who I guess are going to be testifying. Then there's the 911 calls that came in. So the 911 recordings. Then what other evidence? Then we're going to have a bunch of medical personnel witnesses testifying to them treating these students. Now, if you go and look at the video I did regarding the complaint charges against Ethan Crumbley, you will see that it's a similar witness list and similar evidence. But what's interesting to me is that they're being charged with, the parents are being charged with the involuntary manslaughter, the killings of these 4 students who tragically lost their lives, right? These medical records are relating to the students and the medical personnel, the treatment relate to the students who were injured, I believe. So anyway, it's any and all medical treatment relating to Elijah Mueller, medical records regarding Elijah Mueller, treatment regarding Phoebe Arthur, medical records regarding Phoebe Arthur, medical treatment regarding Riley Franz, and then medical records regarding Riley Franz, and then Aiden Wilson, medical records and medical treatment, medical personnel treatment of Molly Darnell. So again, calling the doctors and the nurses who treated potentially these students who were injured. The medical records also, the medical personnel that treated John Escudo, medical records relating to his treatment. And then same with Phoebe Arthur, okay? And then they also indicated the autopsies of the 4 students who tragically lost their lives. Madison Baldwin, Tate Meyer, Hannah St. Juliana's, Justin Schilling. And then there's a representative of the removal service. I assume that's somebody from possibly the coroner's office to remove the bodies. I don't know. The crime lab laboratory reports could be all the shell casings, could be if there was any drug testing done of the defendant, or I don't know what that is at this point. And then also from somebody from the forensic examiner's office that could relate to the students who tragically lost their lives. Also, forensic examination of the firearms used. There's a video that's also indicated, the video dated November 27th. And then there's representative witnesses from the computer crimes lab unit regarding the forensic examination of Ethan Crumbley's electronics, his laptop, his phone, etc. Which curious to me is what about the forensic exam of the parents' phone and laptop? I don't know if that was done or what. And again, this is just a preliminary list. The prosecution could certainly add evidence, potential evidence or potential witnesses that they're going to be calling or using a trial or introducing a trial. Okay, so let's take a look at the counts and let's look at what the prosecution has to prove and also what the potential penalties are if the Crumbleys are convicted of any of these charges, right? And again, this is a criminal case. Defendants are presumed innocent until the prosecution proves each element of these crimes beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury. It's a jury of 12. And if the jury convicts, it has to be a unanimous verdict, okay? So, criminal cases require unanimous verdict. That means all 12 jurors have to agree to convict, okay? So, count one. Did the Crumbleys, Jennifer and James, did they cause the death of Madison Baldwin by committing the following acts? Or acts in grossly negligent manner? So they're saying the parents were grossly negligent. How were they grossly negligent? By storing his or her firearm and ammunition so as to allow access to that firearm and ammunition by their minor child, which is Ethan, or the grossly negligent failure to perform the following legal duty, the failing to exercise reasonable care in the control of their minor child, which is Ethan, so as to prevent him from intentionally harming others, or from conducting himself as to create an unreasonable risk of a bodily harm to others, knowing that he had the ability to control his or her child, knowing that they had the ability to control their child, and knowing the necessity and the opportunity to do so. Okay, so what the prosecution is alleging is that the acts taken or the inactions taken by the Crumbleys, each one of these defendants, each one of Ethan's parents, was grossly negligent. Their acts were grossly negligent. Why? Because they failed to store the firearm and the ammunition, which allowed access to Ethan to get a hold of it, or they failed to perform the legal duty of exercising reasonable care over Ethan so as to prevent him from causing, intentionally harming others, or creating an unreasonable risk, and knowing the necessity to do so. Okay, so they're saying the parents were grossly negligent. Well, I can tell you this much. At the arraignment of the parents, the defense attorney, one of the defense attorneys, said that the firearm was locked. Okay, so maybe that's going to be one of their defenses, that they did lock the firearm. They stored it and locked it so as to prevent Ethan's access. So maybe they can't prove that part of this count one. We'll have to see. The other thing, interesting factually, is that it's alleged that Ethan drew a picture, which was a very disturbing picture of bullets, injured body, which prompted the school to call his parents to campus to come and talk to the school officials. And they claim, I think the school officials claim, that the parents were resistant to remove Ethan from the campus. So Ethan was allowed back in the classroom. He was allowed to stay after that disturbing drawing that he did. And I think also one of his teachers saw that he was searching for how to buy ammunition. I think I'm correct about that. So those are kind of some of the facts or allegations that the prosecution can use to show potentially that Ethan's parents, the Crumbleys, were negligent. Okay, and that they knew of the necessity and the opportunity to do so to control him, right? Because if they knew about this disturbing drawing, the search for the ammunition, and they also knew that there was a gun, because I think there's going to be testimony by the father that he went back home to find out that the gun was missing, and I think he was the one that called 911. And I also think there was either a text or a call from his mother to Ethan, something about her knowing that he possibly was the school shooter. I don't know. We're going to see how this evidence rolls out. But anyway, I just wanted to give you the heads up. So count one for involuntary manslaughter relating to the death of Madison Baldwin. Prosecution has to prove that the parents acted in a grossly negligent manner. right? Either by allowing access to the firearm and ammunition or failing to exercise reasonable care to control Ethan, or knowing of the necessity and the opportunity to do so, they failed to. Okay, so the prosecution is going to have to prove that beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury in order for for the Crumbleys to be convicted of this involuntary manslaughter. Okay, so what's the penalty for the involuntary manslaughter, the death of Madison Baldwin? If they're convicted, they're looking at 15 years and or $7,500 fine. And they're also saying that consecutive sentences can be imposed. So if they're convicted on each one of these, or just two of them, the judge can run the 15 years consecutively. Tack it on, 15 years plus 15 years. Not concurrently, okay? So the second count relates to the death of Tate Meyer. Again, same allegations. Parents were grossly negligent in storing the firearm and the ammunition. They failed to exercise reasonable care to control their son from harming other people or creating an unreasonable risk of bodily harm, knowing that they had a necessity and the opportunity to do so. So again, same hypothetical I gave you, same allegations of them coming to the campus, knowing about the disturbing drawing and search for ammunition, and then providing Ethan access to a gun. Okay, so like every defendant, these are just allegations. The parents are presumed innocent until the prosecution proves their case beyond a reasonable doubt. So count two, they're charged with the involuntary manslaughter of Tate Meyer. Same penalty, 15 years and or $7,500 fine. Count three, causing the death of Hannah St. Juliana. Also, they're being charged with involuntary manslaughter, same penalty. And then count four, the causing the death of Justin Schilling, same penalty. And it's a warrant authorized by the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office. So, those are the four counts, the four involuntary manslaughter counts that Ethan Crumbley's parents face individually. Okay, they're each charged. The trial at this point, it looks like they're going to be tried together. They're represented by the same, defense attorneys, I think, have indicated they're representing both and there's no conflict of interest, is what I think they've indicated in their defense. So, what's the defense going to be for the Crumbleys? Are they going to say, as they did at the arraignment, that the firearm was stored and locked? Therefore, they didn't do anything that was grossly negligent? I don't know what they're going to say about, possibly putting two and two together with the disturbing drawing that he did that day, getting called to campus. They didn't say anything to the school about the gun being purchased, apparently according to the prosecution for Ethan. They didn't tell the school officials that he may or may not have had access to a gun. Now, whether or not they had to say anything, again, that brings up, the Fifth Amendment and also the First Amendment, the right to remain silent. But whether or not their conduct was grossly negligent is a standard that the prosecution is going to have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. So it's a terrible tragedy. It's a terrible school shooting of horrific circumstances. And this case, potentially is going to set precedent depending on how it turns out. Of parents being held for the actions of their minor children, especially in these school shooting situations. If parents, I'm not saying the Crumleys did because these are just allegations, but if they provided access to a lethal weapon like a gun to their child, to their minor child, he was 15 at the time of the school shooting, those are dangerous weapons, and whether or not parents should be held liable for that. There's also civil lawsuits against against the high school by some of these victims. Now, if you want me to take a look at one of the civil lawsuits, I'd be happy to walk you through that. Just leave a comment. Let me know that you'd like me to do that. So, please do leave a comment or question. Please hit that like button. Please do support my work by subscribing. Thank you very much for subscribing. And if you want to support me making these videos, if you think the content, if I provide valuable content, please do support me making these videos. I'll put a PayPal link in the description box below the video. So please do leave your comment or question. I want to know what your analysis is. Do you think, that the parents should be charged with involuntary manslaughter? Do you think that the parents were grossly negligent? I mean, what facts do you think the prosecution could show to prove these counts, these 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter? And why do you think the parents are calling Ethan as a potential witness in their case? Right? They're being tried first. Ethan's trial is not until next year, until January. So let's see what happens too. What the appellate court does, whether or not they decide to throw these charges out or they let it proceed to trial. And then if the Crumbleys are convicted, they, like every defendant, have a right to appeal. Okay, so thank you very much for watching, and please do subscribe.